Excellent. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be looking at this afternoon, looking at EquatIO, but more specifically EquatIO in the Mathspace world. Now, for those of you who are able to join me earlier this week when we looked at EquatIO with Google Docs, forms, and so on, there was a Mathspace component to it where it could be actually inserted into those docs and so on. But what I love is EquatIO took it where that Mathspace can be its own entity. So that's where I'm going to dig in today. And what I'm going to do is also show you where these resources are. So this is going to be later in our presentation where these resources are going to exist. So maybe after this presentation, you'd like to see, well, what does EquatIO look like in a Google Doc or drawings, slides, and forms, and so on, and how you can take the Mathspace content that we're learning today and you can actually embed it in there as well. So because I have that video from earlier this week. Oh, can everyone hear me okay? Okay, there was just a weird audio there. Hopefully we're all good to go. All right, so I'm going to keep going in our presentation. A copy of this link will be provided as well in our doc, but it is also already available in our event. So if you go to our Google Calendar and you go to the event, you will see a link to this document. So first things first, well, what is EquatIO? So just in general, whether it's in your Mathspace or in docs, forms, and so on, it doesn't really matter. It is a math extension that allows you to insert, edit, and interact with digital math and in those formats. What I love about it, though, it's not just math. There's a lot of science components as well, and you're going to see that in the Mathspace that there are actually a lot of shapes that are very specific to science. So it'll be really neat to see that. There is an EquatIO mobile, which I will be also very excited to share with you because that is actually using our mobile devices, and this can be used by staff, by students, so it's capturing their learning. So whether it's handwritten work, math work, or if it's just a picture of something that was done, and they can insert it right into their Mathspace. Speech to math, I'm particularly saying that, not speech to text, because this tool is so sophisticated that it has learned to actually, when you do dictation, so if I go 2/3 plus 1/3, it will actually write those fractions out with the plus sign in the middle. I could even say 2/3 plus 1/3 equals, and then even put the answer, or I can even say equals question mark, and I'm excited to show you that as well. Math to speech. Finally, we have an optical character recognition tool that can take math content and be read to you as math and not gibberish. So I'm sure you've had that in the past, maybe when you had some text being read to you and there's some math stuff in there and it just sounded awful. So that's no longer the case when you use this tool, which is great. Handwriting to math. So in a lot of situations, and you can do this with the EquatIO mobile, or actually write, if you have, let's say, a touchscreen Chromebook, we can write the math and it can convert the writing to text. So that can be very handy for a lot of our students who don't necessarily want to type the math. So just do the handwriting and plug it in and it will convert it. Desmos graphing calculator, we're definitely going to be looking at that today as well. So some of those really nice tools, just like a Cartesian plane. So how do I do ordered pairs in a really nice way of doing that? How do I make it interactive for the kids? This is great when we actually can take our Desmos piece and put it right into our Mathspace. So one thing is, so when you have time, I would love for you to go to the Mathspace at one point, and the URL actually is equatio.texthelp.com. And what I recommend is when you go there for the first time, you may want to just bookmark this so that it's right there in your bookmark bar for easy future access. And this is just a great opportunity for me to also share, if you're doing an activity in Mathspace with your students, you could use this very handy extension that we've now added to all TLDSB users, and it's share to classroom. So you can go to that space, share that URL, and that will push students in your Google Classroom to that page. And you don't have to be in the classroom to do that. So, I mean, physically in the classroom. You don't have to be within a certain distance. As long as they're in your Google Classroom, you can do this. So I just wanted to give you a heads up, when you do go to that link and you land for the first time, you may have to sign in through your Google TLDSB account just initially, just to get in and make sure they know who you are. And this would be then taking you to your dashboard. Now, if you've been here before, you will see some of your dashboard busy with some of the products that you may have created in the past. And what you'll see on the left-hand side, there has been some new additions, which is very exciting. And we're going to go through that. is where one of them is assignments. So this is where, let's say you created a Mathspace, you sent it out to your students, you signed it out where they have to, you expect a response, you will see these assignments right here. And even better, on the next one would be the assignments that you sent out that were submitted. So right now you can see clearly, since I don't have a classroom, I didn't assign anything, this is kind of blank. Submitted assignments in this context for me would be, I apologize, I'm going to back up, are the ones that I would have submitted as a user. So students, like if that was a student, they would have seen all their submissions there. Let me just back up here. Here is where the assignment piece, if you look at the ones I've assigned, you will see a number, and it's kind of grayed out, but I'll show you live in just a moment. There is a number there that is there to indicate how many has been submitted. And in this one here, I can see a number 4, and it's highlighted. It's because there's been 4 submissions, but I have yet to actually look at them to provide feedback and see how they've done. So apologize for that mix up. The next one, of course, being if I were a student, I could see all my submitted assignments that I've done right here. Archived would be any of my spaces that I just archived and deleted because I didn't need them any longer or didn't want them for whatever reason. So when you're there, when you get into EquatIO, the Mathspace, you would want to create probably a new space. And by doing that, it's a really nice user-friendly, just new space, and your students can do the exact same thing. If you get some really convoluted with, like you get tons of spaces, you will notice that there is a search spaces here. So naming your spaces might be a very smart way to do it, because as you can see, it's more of a thumbnail view of all your spaces, and you might want to have it labeled correctly, nicely, so that you can find spaces moving on. When you get into your space, you'll see your basic EquatIO toolbar. And I call it basic, not just because the tools themselves are basic, but because this is actually what you'll find in a Google Doc, in a Google Slide, drawings, and PDFs and so on. So this is just across the board everywhere. So you'll see on the far left, we have an equation editor. So the equation editor is how you can type out your math, but you can also even type text in if you'd like to, which surrounds the math, which is really nice. Because I know sometimes, let's say in Google Docs, when we have create math as an image and we have text that we're trying to line it with it, it can get a little ugly. So you can actually do the typing of your question with the math embedded and then insert it so it looks all very nice as one image. The LaTeX editor or LaTeX editor, I've seen it used both ways in terms of pronunciation. I wouldn't worry too much about that. That's just very high-end, like kind of, I hate to say, old school way of typing out math so that it came out in a visual way. The graph editor, that actually is our decimals piece, which we will be looking at today. Handwriting recognition, as I indicated before, you can do handwriting and it will convert to text. Speech input, this is your dictation. This is where you're going to dictate. So this is going to be from speech to math. EquatIO Mobile, sophisticated tool, love it. I even used it in a fly just even for this presentation to get a quick image in that I wanted to get in. It's awesome. And I can't wait to show you that. And insert Mathspace, of course, when we're in Mathspace, you won't see this little block here because you're already in a Mathspace. But what is really neat is that in every other application, you can insert a Mathspace. It's kind of like a Google Drawings world in a way, a whiteboard way that I can put into whatever I drew on there. It could insert into my Google Docs or drawings and slides and so on. Last but not least, screenshot reader. This is what I was mentioning before. It's where we can have the math read to us, but it actually sounds like math. It actually sounds like real numbers, and the operations like division, square roots, all of that will be actually read to us properly. Then we get to the Mathspace tools. So now there's an additional 3 items there, and you can see that on the very top. So you have a freehand tool. So this is where, again, you can just draw freehand. So let's say the kids want to write out their math, but they don't want to convert to text. Not a big deal. They can actually, again, if you have touchscreen Chromebooks, they could write like their 2x minus 3 equals 10, and they could solve the problem right there using their finger on the screen. And because Mathspace is like a giant whiteboard, it's all good. And you can actually, when they do all that with the handwriting, just like in Smart Notebook, it creates it like an image where you can make it a little bit smaller so it's not taking up all the real estate of your space. Shapes, I use the word amazed here because in terms of you will be amazed by the number of the large volume of shapes available here. It's because it's crazy. Like you will go through it and you'll be amazed as to what is here. So I'll show you what you can do with some of those shapes. Like I created a little video that I tweeted out last night, and just a quick little sample of like cloning. So if you know, in Smart Notebook, one of the cool tools was we had like an infinite cloner. We can create something very similar to that, where I use Canadian coins. And what I did was I wanted to make sure if I did a coin activity with my students, let's say doing change, I would then have it where it was infinitely cloned in a way where the students could grab as many like loonies or toonies or nickels and dimes that they needed. So that's really neat. And they have a lot of science type images in there as well. So when you get a chance to go in there and play, take a look. And again, it's just crazy how awesome it is. The smart shapes, this is where you get more of that interactive piece. So let's say you wanted to have a fraction bar or fraction strip. You want to have a fraction circle, numbered line, protractor. Those tools are all in there. So they're more of an interactive piece where you can actually decide how much is going to be shaded, how less or how little you're going, or how much more you're going to do. I'm going to jump really quickly. The equation editor, I talked a little about this, about typing your math, and you can, again, type in the text so that's all in there. But I wanted to make sure you were aware of a few things as well, that there's a prediction in this. So meaning, let's say I want to type out 2x squared. So when I write 2x and I say the word squared, I can actually start typing SQ, and it will actually pre-populate squared that I can select, and it will square it, which is cool. If I want to do the quadratic formula, I can start typing out you know what I mean? Start typing it out, and it'll pre-populate, and it will be there. Even the simplest, like even Pythagorean theorem, you could start typing it, and it will predict it, and you can have it populate. But there are also some great shortcut keys. So a great shortcut key, if you just need to do an exponent for any reason, you can type the word exponent. You can actually do cubed or squared, or use the caret key, which is the caret key here, if you can see it in my presentation. This is usually Shift 6, and I'll just take you right up in that spot, put in your exponent, and just use the right arrow to navigate away from your exponent, and now you're ready to go to write out the rest of what you're going to do. That's like superscript, same thing. Subscript is where you need to go below. So very commonly used, let's say when we have chemistry formulas. So let's say I want to have H2O. So I want to do H, and then I want to do subscript. So I can do underscore, and I can type in my 2, and then use my right arrow to move over, and then put my O. So that's how you can do that. Or of course you can start typing in subscript, and it'll pre-populate, as I mentioned, with the prediction. A simple fraction, which is really great. So if you want to do 2/3, you could go 2/3, and it'll actually create a vertical fraction for you. And a really neat shortcut keys here is Control-Shift-Enter. And you're not probably going to memorize this, excuse me, but it is neat if you do remember it, because what it does, it automatically copies your first line, and it will create a new line with the exact same thing. So for those of you who are maybe teaching your intermediate grades, where you have to solve equations, for example. So you have your expression written out, and then you want the students to write the next line down below as to, let's say, adding 3 to both sides. And you could have that copy of the original equation, and then they can just add in the extra pieces that they need. Then they could do it again, Control-Shift-Enter. They get exact replica of the line just above that. So then now they can manipulate and so on. So it is pretty neat. And if I have an opportunity, I'd love to show you how that works. This is that LaTeX editor. I'm not going to even spend any time on this, but there's a slide just to show you what I meant by some of the context of how it could be typed and to be recognized as these certain particular math pieces. The graph editor, we talked about that with Desmos. We'll definitely get in there and play with that. This is a bit of a bonus that if any of you are Desmos fans and you have already graphs that you love, and you might be thinking, well, geez, I don't want to start from scratch on any Desmos graphs that I already have. That's okay, because if you have any Desmos graphs that you love, or even the ones that Desmos provided as free samples that you can use, there's a really neat way of grabbing the URL of that graph and putting it into your Mathspace. So I'll spare you the whole details right now on how all that works, but I do have the instructions in this slide, and I'd be more than happy to support that with a video if we don't have time to do it today. At handwriting recognition, as I mentioned to you before, you can write out the math, and then on the right-hand side, little here, you can see it's typed out here, and then you can just insert the math. There is undo, redo buttons to help. So the last maybe little thing you wrote, if it didn't work out so well on the right-hand side, you can undo that. The EquatIO model file, as I mentioned to you before, is probably one of my favorite tools. So we'll be looking at that for sure during this presentation. Screenshot reader, as I mentioned to you before, is that whole thing about capturing the math and having it read back to you with math. And I actually have 2 little videos here that you can look later if you'd like, or anybody who wasn't able to attend our session today, where even in a PDF, or even if I'm just doing Google Images and searching up some math things, I could actually create a box around any of the math and have it read to me. So it is a pretty cool tool. All right, so when you are actually typing in the math, when you go to the equation editor and you're typing things in, you will have some options. As I mentioned, sometimes it's just nice to have the text aligned with your actual math. So this is where you can click on the T and you'll type out your math, type out your words, and then you'll do your math, and then you can go back to words and so on, and it's really just makes everything look nice. You can change the text color as well. So really the math colors. So let's say you just want to change it up a little bit. You want to have different fractions or different things in different colors. You can do that. Add to favorites. So some of your common expressions. So let's say you and your students are going to be using, let's say, the Pythagorean theorem. And that's something you're going to be using a lot. There's a way of, when you first pre-populate it by typing it out, you can click on that heart to save as a favorite. It gives you an option to name it. So you can even call it like PT. And then that way, when you want to retrieve your favorites, you just have to find PT and then it'll populate. When you're working, sometimes the math just needs to be cleared. You want to get rid of it because you need to start from fresh or you made a mistake. This garbage can, it just clears, it just erases what's in the text field. And last but not least, we have more. So these 3 dots, make sure you check them out because it gives you some other options here like bold, italics, underline, all these kind of things. But also this is where you grab your favorite. So the Pythagorean theorem one is I've used as an example before. But there's also different formats where you can have, let's say you're doing a matrix, let's say a 3x3 matrix. Let's say you're doing long division. Oh my gosh, if you want to do long division, I actually create a hyperlink here for you because it's to a little mini video that Text Help created on how you can do long division in here. Even product columns. I'm seeing some people who are going back to what we were doing before. Like, so let's say we have like 234 times by 14 and it's all lined up with the boxes and so on. Well, this does exactly that. It has the columns for your numbers so that it's nicely aligned. Okay, so I know you're probably getting antsy to actually see this for real. So bear with me as I go through a few more features just so you're aware. And one thing I didn't want to walk away with was you not knowing that there was something here that exists, because once I get playing into the tool, I may forget to talk about a few things. So just bear with me. The alignment features is fairly new. I did watch a webinar not too long ago from Text Help where they said that as well. It's like, yeah, alignment was not pretty. But now, thankfully, once you start typing in your equation editor field and you hit enter, once you hit enter, the world's opened up to left alignment, center alignment, right alignment, and align relation, which is probably one of my favorite ones, is because at the secondary level, we certainly like to go around the equal sign. So we want to embrace that. We want everything lined up. It's just a particular thing. So it's nice to have that. And finally, the last thing, which is really neat, is to add row and column. So I just use an example here of how you can add a column. And I didn't actually think of this. I have to say, this was an idea I saw online, which I thought was just fantastic, which was I used the left column for the math, but in the right column, I could actually have the students write out their steps. What did they do? Explain to me your thinking process. So I thought that was pretty sweet. So, or not even maybe the students, but maybe even for myself to explain how I did things and why I did things to help communicate that with my students. There are some settings in your EquatIO, or sorry, EquatIO, in EquatIO. So when you're there and you click on the EquatIO in the bottom left-hand corner, you will see under math options and toolbar options that you can make some settings for yourself. Where there's, let's say, for example, some toolbar options, some tools, maybe that LaTeX editor, you don't need it, you're never going to use it, just turn it off and it doesn't take up the real estate in your toolbar. so you can do that. There's lots of different little things you can do here. And what's nice is your settings here live with you. So even if you log off your computer and go onto a Chromebook and sign in with your same account, these settings will carry over wherever you go. Same thing for our students. If we're learning, there is an EquatIO Academy, which is really neat. I want to show you back in, trying to think where I have it in the toolbar, where I may have a visual of this. Maybe I don't. Okay, so we'll see it live in just a moment. When you're typing something in your equation editor, what you'll find is these little neat tidbits. And you'll see a little icon like this, and it will say, hey, like here are for 2 examples. Here, a graph with audio trace. So like, whoa, okay, well, how do you add audio to your graphs? That's pretty neat to learn. Or I saw another one populate called polynomial long division. Oh my gosh, how do I do that in here? I could click on that and I will be given a demonstration. So I reached out to Texthelp because what I did find when I saw these Academy postings, they were all random, which is cool, but maybe I wanted to find something that I wanted to look for in particular. I didn't find you can navigate around very well to find what else does the Academy have that might enhance my learning. But they were really great to share with me with this URL. So in this presentation, there is a URL now so that if you click on that, it will take you to all the resources for their Academy. So all the little learnings that you may want to have moving forward, it should be in here. And you can do a nice search, and you can see they've done tagging to help filter their little Academy posts. Also with EquatIO, they have an activity database. So maybe some of you recall, maybe with Smart Notebook, there was also kind of like a repository of Smartboard lessons that were shared that you could grab and use. Very similar idea. Now this database doesn't have a whole lot here yet, but it is building. And I actually grabbed a couple examples from this database for our workshop today. So I do recommend you checking this out at some point, because why reinvent the wheel when it's there already? Or if you created something that you're super stoked about and you know that other educators can benefit, please feel free to go into this and upload it. I think they do moderate it, so they go through it, I think, before it gets posted, but it'd be really neat to see your activities up there. Of course, we always support all of their learning in our doc. So in our doc, I will show you how we have a new page now actually dedicated to just, I mean, there is a page for EquatIO already, but there will be a page for all the learning at home sessions that we're doing. Like if you missed the Screencastify earlier this morning or any other sessions earlier this week, you will see the videos, and you will also see the documentation to support those videos. I also provided here a Mathspace quick reference guide, because maybe you don't want to have to go to this presentation to see all the things that I've said and done. What you could do is print that off, for example, if you have access to a printer, and just have it maybe readily available beside you. But I have to say, for the most part, their tools are so intuitive, and if you hover over any of their tools, they do tell you what is what. Okay, so I know there's a lot of talking, and I will be giving you time to play as well, but I wanted to give you one other little resource that I found actually in the database. Is just an example. Says, how can EquatIO be used in your class? And if you click on that image there, it'll take you to a slide presentation that was created by John, who created EquatIO actually from the beginning. He was the initial person behind Texthelp who created it. And he created a bit of a slideshow where he actually gives you some examples from primary, junior, intermediate, and senior classrooms. Now, of course, they're not the end-all be-all. They're just little samples of what you could do in the EquatIO Mathspace. So I do want to give you some playtime, and what I think that will look like is where I'm just going to show you a little bit of the hands-on digging into some of the actual EquatIO Mathspace and what that looks like. And I want to give you some ideas of how you can use this space for your advantage with your students and or with your colleagues. So I'm going to pause right there out of our presentation. And I do have that presentation, as I mentioned, in our event. So you could always grab it so you can get all these hyperlinks I'm going to refer to. Because you can click on the image on the left and it'll give you a copy of this multiplying binomials with algebra tiles master page. And maybe for some of you, you're like, whoa, algebra tiles, binomials, like I'm so I don't want to go down this road. Don't worry, this is not going to hurt you. All I'm going to ask at this time is just follow along, and I just want to show you some things that we can do in EquatIO, and then I'm going to get to some other activities as well. So I'm going to jump to my EquatIO Mathspace. But before I do, actually, what I would love for you to do, if you have a question at this time, I'm going to stay on this page, but I'm going to ask you to unmute your microphone, and please feel free to pipe in. And if there's anything that I just covered that you need a little clarification, I would love to hear from you.
Hi, excuse me. I'm sorry. You may have covered this in the beginning, but I missed the first few minutes. I was wondering where the best spot to access the EquatIO site would be.
Oh, the best way to access it? That's a good question. I do have it in our docs, and there is a URL that is provided in our presentation. And what I'll do is I'll even put it in our chat pod real quick. I'm just going to jump ship here. And I'll put it in our chat pod. Don't get thrown off by the weird mirror view in front of you. And what I was saying at the beginning too is that my suggestion would be to bookmark it. So to do that, if you are going to do something like that, you're gonna all you have to do is click on the little star where you put the URL. You click on the star, and it'll populate. Do you want it in your bookmark bar? You can change the naming of it if you like as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking. Anybody else?
Okay, so as well as identify.
Can the documents be embedded in Google Classroom? Like, can the students upload their assignments?
Yeah, so it's actually a little smoother than that, because I can take my my new space, like any of my spaces here, and I can share it out by Google Classroom, and they will have then a link to do the math in there and return it back to you, and you would see those assignments here, and you would see what was completed and stuff. So it talks very nicely with Google Classroom. Perfect. I'll show you guys how that works as well. Okay, so what I wanted to show you is one of the things, and this is not about using, and let me just open up my Mathspace. This is not about your knowledge of multiplying binomials and using algebra tiles. That's not what this activity is about. What I wanted to show you was this was an activity that I got from the database, and that database, because I just did a screenshot in our presentation. Here's what you can see. You'll see a whole bunch of different activities. And I think because it's at the very end here, let me just get to the very beginning. So you can see like adding fractions with uncommon denominators, algebra tiles, you have cat tangram, electricity diagrams, like you name it, you see it, and you can filter your searches here. So that's where I was saying how, this is where I actually took this binomial one. So this here, where is it? I don't see it at the moment, but I took this binomial one with multiplying. I did not start this from scratch. Somebody else created it. I made it, and you automatically make a copy of it when you get your own version of it. But then I tweaked it. So what I did was I didn't necessarily like the colors that they chose to use. So I just changed the colors and just made it my own. And of course, if I were to ever use it publicly, like I did in this presentation, or if I do in a video, I would give them credit for obviously being the original creators of this document. But what's nice about this is a prime example of where I have created, and this is where I'm going with this, is that this here is set up perfectly for any future questions I want to give to my kids for multiplying two binomials. And you could probably think of a million examples yourself for the kind of math that you're teaching with your students, where you just want to set up a template. And then once you have that template, you put that time and energy into the template as to the way you want it. Well, you don't want to screw it up by all of a sudden now putting questions in it. So how do we then make a master copy so that this is like your template, and then create future questions based on it? So this is what you're going to do. So let's say you created your masterpiece here, and you're going to keep it as your template. I have a share button right here, and this is going to go down that Google Classroom road question as well that someone already asked. I have two types for selecting sharing. I have make a copy for each person, or make a copy for each person and expect a response. So I'm going to go down the response road later when I wanted to go to Google Classroom. But this is the first one that I want to pick because this is just about sharing out a URL. So this could even be a way I can share this great template with my colleagues, put it up in maybe the Google Classroom that exists for your grade group that you guys are maybe a part of. Hey, I created this great Mathspace and this covers electricity unit in grade 7 and whatever you're doing with it. Then you can grab the URL by clicking on continue. This is now a unique URL just for this thing right here. Notice that Google Classroom is still part of this. So I still can share this with Google Classroom, but it just send out as it with a URL so they have access to it and they each get their own copy, which is great. But probably the initial one, where I went back to one step where I want every student, I want to expect a response. That's probably what I'd pick if I'm going to go down the Google Classroom road. And as I mentioned, we'll cover that in just a minute. Okay, template, I've got this copied, this URL. So this is magic. This is special for this particular one. And here's what's really sweet. If I were to now open up a new tab, this is not going to give me a version where you have to be afraid that someone's going to screw it up on you. You've now sent it off to, let's say, the world. You sent it off to maybe your colleagues, to whoever you wanted to, and they open up that URL. What's going to happen is this. This is saying this has been shared with you, and this is going to make a copy, and it's going to add to your spaces. So I can dismiss it. It's like, no, you know what? I don't want it. Or I can click Save Now. I don't need to go back to my dashboard. I'm just going to click Dismiss. And you'll see the word copy right here, which means now this is my version that I can play with. So even for myself, I'm thinking, I have my master. I created my template. I don't want to screw it up. I've now made a copy of that so that now what I can do, let's say, because I already did question 1 before, because I did a little video on this already. So I'm going to call it Q2, and I'm going to get rid of the word master. Now what I could do is, okay, well, I have this all set up, and now I want to be able to put in, well, what are the 2 binomials that they're going to multiply? And this is now, for the first time, you may be seeing how we have this equation editor pop up. So while we're here, you may see all those things. I'm just going to hide this. You'll see all those tools that I was telling you about in that slideshow. And what's here is nice with the T, and you can change your color, the favorites, blah, 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 all these things. And look at, there's a little sample of what I was talking about earlier with the Academy information. I could click on that. It'll give me a little more information on isotopes if you'd like. I don't care about that right now. I want to get in a binomial, so I'm going to start typing. What I love is, even look at this. How intuitive and wonderful is this? As soon as I start a bracket, what did it do? Has a closed bracket. For our students, that's great. We want them, they never close the brackets. So we have an open bracket. We have a grayed out closed bracket. So I'm going to do just like X minus 3. And all I had to do was tab over and to make it to actually go black, the other side of the bracket, and I can go X plus 1 and tab over. So there's the math expression. So these are the 2 binomials I want the students to be able to multiply. I'm going to click Insert Math. Now, this is the one thing. I kind of wish if when I clicked on Insert Math, this would kind of just go away, but it doesn't. So I'm just going to close on the X right here to give me back my space. Here it is that they gave me my math, and all I'm going to do is do this. Okay, so there's my question now. So this is where the question 2, they're talking about here, they have all the algebra tiles ready to go, and they're set to answer this question. But now again, I don't care if this is algebra tiles or apples or any other of the myriad of shapes that they have here. And just to show you just some examples of what they have here. So we have the Canadian coins, as I mentioned earlier, tangrams, pattern blocks, some of your 3D shapes that you probably love to have access to, some of your nets that you want to maybe have access to, Venn diagrams, fantastic. I've used Venn diagrams quite a bit in here. Your T-chart. Look at, there's a science parts of resistors, variable resistors, grounds, you name it, you can see it. And I can just keep going and keep going. Some of our equilateral triangles, isosceles triangles, rhombuses, and so on. I love it. They even indicate the 60 degrees and the 30 degrees, your star, cubes, and so on. You just keep going. So it doesn't really matter what my shape is. Let's say it's a basketball, for example. And this is just for modeling. And I can change, of course, The colors of this, I can change this right here. Let's say I want to make this pink or blue or black, or let's say more traditional yellow, orangey thing color here. It doesn't really matter. And let's say I wanted to have tons of these basketballs. So this was what I was trying to show earlier in the other video that I created with the coins, was where I wanted to make sure students could have multiple basketballs. Or maybe I even want just a few. I can just go a couple of ways of doing this. I can just go Control-C and Control-V for those of you who are comfortable with those shortcut keys, or just simply copy, paste, 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 paste. I can have as many as I want. And what I could do, some really neat tools, is I can just select this whole region of these balls. Take a look at some options here. This is a center horizontal, so this just means that. And this is now going to be center vertically. Look at that. So if I just move that up here, for example, and this is just like how these tiles are created, which is why I'm mentioning this, because take a look what I can do now. Click off somewhere, and I have as many balls as I want for depending on the purpose of my activity. So you can do this for tons of different shapes. You can set that up so that when you do send it out to the students, they already have all these shapes created, or you can show them how to do this. So depending again on the activity, maybe they should know how to do this. And if I wanted to, again, I can delete them all in one set if I want to, just by pressing the delete button or the garbage can right here. Or hey, let's just fix this up again to what I just had. Move it back over here. And there you go. So hopefully that can be helpful in some way. Okay, let's get rid of that for now. And let's say now I'm ready to share this out with my students. So what does that look like when you take your Mathspace and you want your students to actually do the math? I'm going to click on that share button. This time I'm going to choose make a copy for each person and expect a response. I'm going to go to continue. And this time I'm going to click on the Google Classroom. Choose a class. So I have a delete me class. And I'm just going to create an assignment. And you saw that you had different options. I'm going to click go. Now I can do other instructions here. This is going to be, let's say, multiplying two binomials. And then I can just go in again. This is your typical Google Classroom piece where I can choose how little or how much I want to do. Is it going to be graded? How many points is it going to be? Is there a due date? Is there a topic? And so on. And then you click assign. So I'm just going to pretend I'm going to go through all this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just going to click assign. And of course, like usual, I can decide to schedule this for later. So let's say this is an activity for next week. I could schedule it for later in the week, or I could save it as a draft. So one reason why you may want to save something like this as a draft is back here for a moment. I could grab the URLs every time to each one of my activities, because as you notice, this is question 2. Well, what if I want question 1, question 3, question 4, question 5 as well added to this? So this would be where I'd grab those URLs instead, go here, go back to my draft mode of this and just add all the questions. And here's a little good news for you, because you may be thinking what I was thinking is that, wow, that's a real pain to have multiple questions on different Mathspaces. That's silly. So I do have good news. I was talking to Text Help people, and the good news is I don't have a release date yet, but we are going to have multiple pages. So that means we can have, let's say, even our master, page 1, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but we'd have then question 1, question 2, question 3, and I can then replicate that across different pages so that when I'm sharing it out in Google Classroom, it will be one link, one page, like one Mathspace with multiple pages. So that is coming, okay? So keep that in mind. Okay, so let's say I assign this. Perfect. It's been posted in my classroom. I can view it in my classroom if I want, see what it looks like. Right, so here I posted it, and of course I can go to the classwork page to see it too if it wasn't posted in the stream, and students should be able to click on it and they'll be able to, and of course I only have one little lone student in here, so they would go in and they can finish the math. So to go back to my dashboard, it should, and maybe I'm just going to refresh my page. I will see under assignments, there you go, question 2, multiplying binomials with algebra tiles. So there's a quick way of grabbing the link again if I want to share that link. And here's 0 to indicate there's been 0 responses so far. But let's say I wanted to see what the responses are when students did some work. So here's just an old one. I can't remember what this was all about. But here's just a class. This was, I think, a junior class that I was in a while back, and we were playing around with some of the equation. And you can see how they have all their different responses here. Okay, and I'm just going to go that quickly. I'll make sure that that part is taken out with the student names. But I just wanted to show you quickly how you could drill in and see all the assignments right there. And you can click on them and then provide feedback on any of those assignments that they've assigned, that they have actually marked. So let me just try this one, because maybe there's no student names in this one. Well, there is. I'll just get rid of this for the future space for the video, but let's click on this for us. Okay, feedback view, so leave feedback for the student, and I can just turn it off or I turn it on, and then when I'm ready for the feedback, when I've actually provided it, so I can make my marks, I can type in whatever the student did, and then I would send that off, send back to the students. Now, I don't want the student to get screwed up, and it's like, why all of a sudden this random lady is providing some feedback to something that they probably did a few years back, but I just wanted to let you know that we can do that. So you can do the feedback, and send it off to the kids so they know that they got the feedback. And if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to jump in. Okay, so let's go to a whole other different activity. So what I want to show you is how we can get something like this. So this looks like a pretty standard type question for a lot of our junior up and to up students. Even some of our grade 9 students would have issues with ordered pairs. And so going through something like an ordered pair activity would be really nice, whether it's a diagnostic or if we want to have a nice consolidation activity, exit card type thing. This is something you can so quickly do in EquatIO Mathspace. So I'm going to show you right now how I did this. And I promise it'll be super fast. So I'm just going to go back to my new space. Now, under the interactive shapes, there technically is a coordinate grid. Okay, I'm not a huge fan of it at this moment. I know there's going to be some updates to it, but I personally think we don't need to use it when we have the graphing tool like Desmos. So I'm not going to use, and I'm talking about this one here, I'm not going to use this coordinate plane right here. I'm going to actually jump to Desmos, the graphing editor, real quick. And I'm going to do things like, and this is where it's really neat. So you can do the points, let's say 1, -2, and you can see it right here. You can do a label. You're thinking, oh, I don't want to do a label. And then the kids see what it is. The whole point is maybe for the students to tell me, what is that point? Well, I want to show you where you can take that label. However, right now it is 1, -2 as a default. But what you could do is replace that with the letter A, for example. And now I can do another one. Hit enter or tab, I think it is. No, what is it? Enter, just down below. And let's say I want to do another one. So let's say I'm going to do 0, -4. Okay. Enter. Oh, and I want to go back to actually labeling that. Oops. Label and B. And let's do quickly another one. Let's say 5, 4. Label. And B. So let's say we want to do that. Well, you notice that they kind of start adding colors, but there's 2 red, 1 blue, 1 green. Well, this is not a big deal. You can click on the gear, And what you could do is click on the red one and just change it to a different color. There you go. Okay, and then you click done. And now I have my points. I have my A, B, C, and D. I can just use it using the trackpad to zoom in or out however I want this to look. I want to make sure at least I have all the points right here the way I want them. You can play around with any of these tools right here that you may want for your activity. But for just quick and easy, as I promised, I'm just going now to go insert graph. I can put that wherever I want on my page. I can make it as big or as small as I like. I just tend to have the habit of putting my instructions on the left, which I will do right now. And I will say something like label or provide the ordered pairs for each point on the grid, something like that. Oops. See, when I start typing, I'm going to show this actually, because it's like these weird, like this. First of all, of course, as I told you, the math is going to be kind of coming up as like predicting what I'm trying to write. But I'm actually writing text. So I'm going to indicate that by typing with the T. And I'm going to say now provide or give the ordered pairs for each point labeled on the graph. Something like that, just as simple. Okay. And I'm going to insert just the instructions right now. There we go. Perfect. And now what I would like to do is maybe help out with my students, and I want to do the A, B, C, and D. So I can do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this out. So I'm going to, because I don't want this anymore. Don't worry, it doesn't delete this up here. I'm just starting from fresh. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to do this again. I'm going to go A, and I'm going to do my brackets. And because I'm doing text, that's why it's not doing that. And I can even do a comma if I want. That's why it's not automatically closing my brackets, which I can get over. And what's really nice here is if I go, it was Control-Shift-Enter. So Control-Shift-Enter. Now it's copied it. So remember I told you that Control-Shift-Enter does the copying. Now I'm going to change A to B. Control-Shift-Enter. C. And finally, oops. Control-Shift-Enter. Enter, and D. Not that I couldn't manually recreate this, but this is all about efficiency. I don't want you guys having to work harder than you already are. So let's just do that. And then we can make it bigger, smaller, whatever they want there. And then this is what's really nice with some of the tools that we have from the students can do. Okay, so let's say you sent this out to your students. Okay, I want you to label these, or I want you to find out these points. I want you to do that. And you can make these points a little bigger if you want, just by drawing your own circles and putting them on here. But the point is the kids are coming in, they're going to do the math. How are they going to answer these questions? Well, let's take a look. So what they can do is, well, let's say they want to use the freehand drawing tool. So let's say they have a touchscreen Chromebook and they just want to write out the math, and we give them big spaces to do that. So they can count along here, and they can even do like this. They can go, okay, for A, it's +1 and then down 1, 2. So they could even label this. So they could go -1. Oops. Let's do that again. So this is going to be 1 to the right, and we're going down 1, 2, and I'm going to do the pencil again, and I'm going to go -1 and 2, something like that. Okay, so maybe that's what they want to do here. That's how they can decide to do it, and they want to go, okay, A is 1 over and down -2. Well, let's say they didn't want to do the handwriting like that in their answers. Let's say they wanted to type it out. So they could do that as well. So to do that, let's go to our, or even talk it out. I'll show you both. So let's say for the next one. Okay, so I'm going to garbage that for a moment. And let's say for B, so we have 0, and they're going 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 0, -4. So what they could do here is handwriting. So they could go 0, right? We could insert that math. There's the 0. And now we want -4. So I'm going to put -4. And we're going to insert that math. See how it's there? It populated the text. I'm going to replace that math technically. Oops. Let's not do that. I just have to click off. That's why. And now I need to insert math. Okay, because I still had the 0 selected from before. That's why I was replacing and not inserting. And there we go. So let's say we want to do the speech to text. So let me look for C again. So we have +5, +4. So I'm going to do the speech. So I'm going to garbage this and make sure nothing's selected. Perfect, like before. And I want to say 5. Allow. 5. Insert the math. And obviously we can go way more sophisticated when we're doing speech to text and so on, but this is just for this demonstration, and we want the number 4. 4. And, oops, see, I had replaced math again, so I need to click off somewhere. That's okay, now I can insert math. Not all is lost, and so on. So hopefully you get the idea. So that's how it works, and you can just keep going, and whichever way the students feel more comfortable doing it. But while we're here, I do want to show you just really quick, I know this has nothing to do with this activity, but how sophisticated this really can be. 2x squared minus 3x plus 2 equals 0. So there you go. I did a really good job with my dictation to get the math. And what I could do is, again, as I mentioned to you before, I can now do a new line and so on, and I can still talk it out. But my suggestion is you hit enter and you talk the math again. So you hit, oh, it entered there. It's not going to do this blah, blah, blah stuff. I wanted to go down the next line before I did my next recording, before I did the text. Question?
Yes, Tina,
Yes.
You've been entering those values separately. Could kids also do the full bracket where they put the entire ordered pair?
Yeah, I think what I could have done here, because I have the math there. If I go to, let's say, edit math, what they could have done here is now start typing in their numbers. See that?
Okay.
1,
Yes.
-2 to answer you. So that probably would have been a lot easier if they just did that. And you could give them a little instruction on that. And then we can replace the math and that would be in there. And I could get rid of all those other numbers.
And that would only change on their version of it, not on yours.
You got it. Yep, exactly.
Sounds good.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's the whole piece. So now just due to time too, because I wanted to show you some really neat things where, let's say, okay, I had, I'm just going to jump out here for a second. Let's say I had where we're just talking about what Wes is asking about doing it separately and so on. What if I wanted to do an EquatIO question? So how do I get, let's say, an EquatIO question in the student's hands? Here we are. We're not at school. How do I get it to the kids so I can see where they're at? And not even just necessarily for EquatIO purposes, but the idea, some of the questions are really good, and I just want to see where the kids are at and how they explain their understanding. So what I'm going to do is use this EquatIO mobile. So, and I'm going to show you my phone at the same time. So let me just do a couple little things here. Okay, and what I'm going to do is the camera. And all I'm going to do is scan that QR code. It's going to now open up in Safari. It's going to find any active documents that I'm in. So I'm in an untitled document. I'm going to choose the last one at 253. So I'm going to choose that. And now I have some options. The pencil being like that handwriting tool I was mentioning to you before, I can actually write out some math and it'll convert it to text for me and insert it into my document. The speech to text, same idea. Fantastic. I can talk out the math, it'll convert to text, insert it into my document. If I wanted to, the whole idea, what I wanted to show you this part though, is for the picture. So now, let's say I have this grade 3 EquatIO math question in front of me. I can just do my best to take a picture of it. I am able to crop it and just make sure it's kind of pretty good. Hit the check mark. I can save as math or save as image. So let me explain the difference. When you're saving as math, it would try to convert everything they see to what they think is math. That probably is better when you actually handwrite, let's say 1/3 plus 2/3 equals whatever. That might be where you take a picture and convert it to math if you wanted to, just like the speech to text and so on. But in this case, I'm going to save as an image. I clicked on the plus blue arrow there. And now let me get rid of all this. and take a look. Boom, there we have an EquatIO math question. I can provide instructions, sent it out by Google Classroom, and I say, which one would you pick and why? And here's the really cool thing. If you're part of our session for Screencastify, or if you want to learn about it, what would be really neat now is if a student turned on Screencastify, which they can record their screen and their voice, you can actually have the students do the math, but record them doing the math. So you can have them send that in with their Mathspace to show that they're, you know, if they understand the math. So just whole other level there, but that is an option that you can do. Now, due to time, is there any other questions? Maybe hopefully something I haven't missed? Okay, I'm just gonna pop over to see what the chat pod says, sorry. Okay, no worries. Thank you for coming out. Okay.
Great stuff. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for coming out.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, I'm gonna stop presenting here.